Want to know why? Ask how. Howard, the humongous. Tonight's question: does free will, does free will exist? Or is it some kind of peculiar illusion? Let's take a look at one example of a person who did some intense things that made a big difference in his world. Did he have free will or not? His name was Adam Lanza. He grew up in Sandy Hook, Connecticut. His mom had divorced his dad. His dad was a corporate executive. His mom was so well off because of the results of the divorce that she didn't have to do a day of work in her life. Nonetheless, there were two things she did do. She volunteered at Sandy Hook Elementary School and was given a certificate for her contribution to the lives of the students. And she loved guns. She had roughly 8 to 10 guns in her house. She had 1,400 rounds of ammunition. They were kept in a gun safe. She had handguns and she had rifles. She had a shotgun and she had a Bushmaster, a highly automatic, very lethal device. She had two sons. She took her sons to the shooting range and she taught them the proper care of guns. Adam was a very bright kid. He was an honor student. He got into the local college at the age of 16. Some of his time he was in public schools. He was in public school when he was at Sandy Hook Elementary School. He was at public school when he was in high school. Some of the time he was in Catholic school, and some of the time he was homeschooled by his mom. But again, he was a strange kid. He had a hard time relating to other kids. He tried to stay as invisible as possible. He went through a box of Kleenex a day. Why? Because he couldn't bear to touch doorknobs with his hands. So he used Kleenex, presumably to protect himself from germs. He went through 20 pairs of socks a day. His mom sometimes had to do 2 laundry loads a day because Adam was so busy changing his clothes. He washed his hands frequently. He showed all of the signs of being an obsessive compulsive. He put black garbage bags over the windows of his bedroom. He spent a lot of time in the basement. He spent a lot of time with his computer. In fact, he did something quite astonishing. He built a flowchart, a spreadsheet, 4 feet by 7 feet in size. What did he chronicle on that spreadsheet? 500 mass murders. He was obsessed with mass murders. One Friday, December 14th, 2012, Adam Lanza got up, took his guns, took at least 200 rounds of ammunition, went to his mother's room with one of the guns. His mother was in her pajamas in the bed. He shot her 4 times in the head. He jumped into the car and drove 15 minutes to Sandy Hook Elementary School. Sandy Hook Elementary School had learned the lessons of Columbine, of school shootings. It had lockdowns. It had drills for school shooters. It had intense security. Its doors were all locked. You needed to get visually identified to be let into the school. Adam Lanza bypassed the visual identification system. He shot his way through the glass window of the front door of the school and shot his way into the school. Then Adam Lanza went on a hunt. He shot every adult who came out into the corridor trying to intercept him, trying to get him not to shoot, trying to get him to drop his weapons. He went into classrooms where teachers had huddled their kids in the back, where teachers had hidden kids under their desks. He methodically shot every single one of the children huddled together. He methodically shot the children hiding under the desks. He did a lot of shouting. He did a lot of cursing. He told kids to stay still, to look at him. Then he shot them. He killed them. And he wasn't satisfied with killing with one shot. Most of the kids he shot multiple times. He just kept on shooting. When he finished with one classroom, he went to the next classroom. And if he was able to get in, and if it looked like there were students there, he shot. He shot 20 kids between the ages of 6 and 7. He shot 6 adults. And in the end, he shot himself. The entire incident took place in a mere 20 minutes to half an hour, and then it was over. Did Adam Lanza have free will? What is free will? Well, according to the research of Benjamin Libet, in a sense, there is no free will. What does Benjamin Libet's research indicate? There is a still small voice, a pilot light of the soul, an instantaneous source that makes up its mind. It makes up your mind about whether to reach to your left and pick up a cup of coffee. It makes up your mind about whether to push the start button to see me or the stop button to stop seeing me. But once it makes up its mind, it does two things. It sends out two signals. It sends one signal to your fingers to lift the coffee cup, and simultaneously it sends another message to your frontal cortex. It sends another message to your conscious brain. In other words, approximately half a second, 0.4 seconds, before you become aware of the fact that you are about to lift the coffee cup, a signal goes out to your hand and to your conscious brain. Your conscious brain, in other words, is not tipped off to the fact that something in you has made the coffee cup decision until almost half a second after the decision was made. So what in the world is free will? If something deep inside you, that little pilot light of the soul, that thing that's presumably, because Benjamin Libet did not pin down the exact location, so presumably that little pilot light of the soul is somewhere deep in your limbic system or deep in the top of your brain stem. If that's making the decisions and the conscious you is giving itself the illusion, is taking on airs, is pretending that in fact it had some control over whether you would pick up the cup of coffee or not, and that if in fact is what your conscious self is doing, it's taking claim, it's taking credit for something you've done after the fact. Then what in the world is free will? Well, it turns out that there is a big batch of neurons that go from the limbic system in your brain up to the frontal cortex, up to the cortical layers of your brain, up to the parts of your brain that are the conscious you. That's a one-way system carrying messages from your emotional system up to your conscious system. There's a much more fragile set of neurons that goes from the frontal part of the brain, the cortex, the conscious you, back to the limbic system, back to the emotional and muscular self. In some people, that system of communications going back to the limbic system, to the emotional center, is very strong. In some people, it's very weak. And there's neuroplasticity. If you work very hard, you can train that system. One system carries messages from the instantaneous part of the brain, the spontaneous part of the brain, the still pilot light of the soul of the brain, up to your frontal cortex and makes announcements. But your frontal cortex, if it exercises that pathway back to the limbic system, can control the limbic system. It can tell the limbic system what to do. If you never want to pick up another cup of coffee in your life, if you decide that coffee is bad for you, and you work hard enough on getting your conscious brain to send signals back to the limbic system, you can train the limbic system so the next time it makes a spontaneous decision, before it makes that decision, before it ever announces that decision to you, That decision can be what you've told your limbic system to do. That's self-control. That's will. What about Adam Lanza? Adam Lanza's visit to the Sandy Hook Elementary School, his killing of 27 people, was not a spontaneous event taking place in the still small pilot light of the soul back here in the limbic system. It was something he worked on deliberately for years. It was something he trained that still small pilot light of the soul to focus on with his chart, his 4x7 spreadsheet of 500 massacres, his obsession with mass killing. Adam Lanza was a little bit autistic. Adam Lanza had Asperger's. Adam Lanza had difficulty relating to his fellow human beings. But one thing that happens to those of us who have mild degrees of autism, mild degrees of Asperger's, and obsessive-compulsive disorders is we are very good at building the pathways from the frontal cortex, from the parts of prefrontal cortex, the conscious parts of the brain, back to the limbic system. So that when the limbic system does something spontaneous, like break into a classroom and shoot one kid after another, that spontaneity has been trained. There is and there isn't free will. The pilot light of the soul makes up its mind, the limbic system, before it ever announces the decisions it's made to you and me. But if we work hard enough, we can train that pilot light to make the decisions we are determined it should make. And hopefully, none of the decisions you and I ever make will be the equivalent of Adam Lanza's decision. Our decisions will not be to snuff out 27 lives with 157 gunshots. Our decision will be to save lives, to upgrade lives, to make lives more joyful, more rich, more intense, more filled with insight. This is Howard the Humongous, speaking to you from the future. It's your job and my job to make. Or, want to know why? Ask how. Now we need to find the off button. Ah! I found it! No, I haven't quite found it.